here to talk about my second Victorian novel of the year that I have read. I was not intending to get through another one this quickly, but I started both a reread of The Heir of Redcliffe because at the end of February on my Patreon book club, we're going to be discussing The Heir of Redcliffe, and I want to reread it for that, and also just because I wanted to reread it. But also then I was like, well, I would also like to be reading more Charlotte Mary Yonge books anyway this year. So I think at the same time, I'll just read both Chantry House and The Heir of Redcliffe. So on Project Gutenberg, I look around and see what they have by her, and there is quite a bit of writing, and I'm very excited to continue to explore. So any of the ones that you can kind of browse, they'll have kind of a subject or genre listed for each book, and the ones that say domestic fiction, yes, social life domestic fiction, those are the ones that I'm very interested in. So I started Chantry House and I could not put it down once I began it. It has kind of all of the tells of a Charlotte Mary Yonge novel. There is the parochial life, and so all of the characters, it's a regular occurrence that they are going to church together, and very are aware of the church calendar and celebrating different saints' days. Christmas was mentioned in this one. It was over several years, so it was mentioned 5 or 6 times. Never quite as much Christmas as I want, but it was mentioned multiple times, especially because there's a crucial thing that happens each Christmas, and I will get into that in a minute. But it was the story of a family. It has the slice of life pacing, so you feel that you are doing day-to-day life with these characters. Like I said, with you're aware of the church calendar, you're also aware of the seasons, and I love that. It makes it feel all the more engaging, and it adds a cozy aspect to it. And also, you are very much in on the different characters, their personal struggles to grow and mature. That's always an element I've seen in every one of her books, kind of self-improvement, but I think self-improvement can kind of have a negative connotation. I think maybe finding the strength that they didn't know they had is in there. Again, not all the characters live until the end. I don't think there's been a single book that I've read by her where there hasn't been one of the main characters that dies by the end. So do be aware of that going in. Don't get too attached to any of them. Thankfully, in this one, I wasn't that attached to the character that died. And the first few chapters are set, I can't remember exactly where they're set, but then this family inherits a house, Chantry House, and they go to the house. And so the majority of the novel, 90%, is set in Chantry House, and it's about their family's life living there. And there is a scandal that happens to their family prior to them moving there. And one of the sons is court-martialed and then is sent home, but disgraced. And so you could tell they moved to a very insular community. And Clarence is the name of the son who is court-martialed. And so it takes the community a while to decide whether they're going to accept him. And kind of that shame that he has hanging over his head, it really takes a toll on him. And interestingly, this book is the first one that is narrated, not only it's narrated first person, but it's narrated by a disabled character. In every single one of Charlotte Mary Yonge's books that I have read, there is a disabled character. And it's so interesting to me that she herself, as far as I know, was not disabled, but she always has disability representation and has it in such a refreshing way. That they have this aspect of themselves, but it doesn't take away from their intellect or their spirit, and they are not less of a person because of this disability that they have. So it's really remarkable. And in this one, the narrator, Edward, has a sort of accident when they are either a baby or a toddler, and so then they are wheelchair bound. And this is referenced, multiple times throughout, and he says several times too, also how when they're on holiday or just visiting other people, how he really appreciates how his family is constantly aware of this and tries to pick activities that they can all do together. And also, he's just such a breath of fresh air. And I also love that he doesn't really take much time to feel sorry for himself, and that when his family are doing activities that he's not able to take part in, he occupies himself with a book or drawing or yeah, just different activities that he's able to do to pass the time. An interesting element of this one is it had some spooky supernatural elements. There's a ghost that haunts Chantry House every Christmas day. And I was kind of surprised to see a ghost in a Charlotte Mary Yonge novel because they are pretty realist. But also, I mean, the Victorians did love a good ghost story, so I shouldn't be surprised that a Victorian realist novel would still include a ghostly element. And eventually, you kind of get more background on why they think the ghost comes every year on Christmas Day. And it's really interesting. So there's one daughter in the house, Emily, and then there's Clarence, and then Griffith, and then, oh gracious, Martin. That's his name. And you just come to love this family like they are your very own, and their parents as well. And I love it so much. What was interesting to me is this was the most kind of blatantly aware of theology. The other books kind of hinted it, but this referenced specific psalms. You know, when certain characters are going through trials, they would be in church and hear a sermon on Psalm 37, and then they felt like they could really get through their trial. And also, the Oxford movement, which happened in England during the Victorian era, was a movement amongst Anglicans thinking that we had kind of tossed out too much of church tradition during the Reformation, and we should get as much of that back as we could without actually being Catholic. And the Oxford movement is referenced very heavily in here. And there are some that are clergy that come from Oxford and then start bringing more of that church tradition to where they live. So it was really interesting. It was the most blatantly the Oxford movement was spoken about. Charlotte Mary Yonge herself was part of the Oxford movement. But this was the most I had seen it written about. So this was altogether delightful. I really loved this. It's just kind of, she writes just delightful domestic novels. And I feel a bit more emotionally attached. Her novels do feel similar to Trollope, but I do feel a bit more emotionally attached to Charlotte Mary Yonge's characters than I do Trollope's. Trollope definitely has warmth in his, but there's something, maybe hers are more sentimental, or I don't know, something about them suits me a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, I do really enjoy all of the Trollope that I read. I think I've enjoyed it all, and I want to continue to read more by him, but so far, Charlotte Mary Yonge, she might be, I think she is becoming my third favorite Victorian author, and I have no plans to, take a break from Charlotte Mary Yonge. Actually, I was a little bit worried as I was reading Chantry House, oh no, I'm worried now I won't be in the mood for The Heir of Redcliffe, but I found myself so sad after finishing Chantry House that I was delighted to pick back up with The Heir of Redcliffe. So yes, I think that is all I will say about that. Thank you for continuing to join me on this journey through 25 Victorian novels this year. So far, I'm on schedule because it's one more than 2 books a month. And I did say that I wanted to, what did I say was the next one I was going to dive into? Maybe I said Chantry House in my last video. Right now, I am still in the midst of Can You Forgive Her?, which is the first in the Palliser series by Anthony Trollope. I'm doing that on audio, and I think the third time is the charm. I'm really, really enjoying it. But I am finding myself more limited with my audiobook listening because I also need to keep up with the read-along of Romola that I'm hosting by George Eliot. And I don't want to get behind on that. So I did, Wanda McCadden narrates that, and I'm really thankful to have access to that. But I am so excited. I just am thoroughly engaged whenever I'm listening to Can You Forgive Her? And then I would like to keep reading the journals of George Eliot and, finish that one up, because then I want to start the trilogy, the Molly Hughes, A London Child, A London Girl, and A London Home, her series between the 1870s and 1890s. I'm very excited about this series, but I would like to not be reading two diary/journals at once, if that makes sense. Yeah, so those are my Victorian plans for the time being. Thank you as always for joining me, and I will let you know the next Victorian book that I read. Bye.